demon are you? Why are you torturing this innocent woman?
Hello and welcome to another bad movie review. This time we're looking at Shark Exorcist. This is from 2015, runs about 70 minutes, and was directed by Donald Farmer. Now, Donald Farmer was also the writer and producer on this. As I've said before, he has directed a lot of low-budget films, and he seems to have dived into no-budget films. Now, some of the movies I've seen of his include 1987's Cannibal Hookers and 1993's Savage Vengeance, as well as Bigfoot Exorcist. So this movie opens with an evil nun. She sort of wanders around a cemetery for a minute, then goes out to the lakefront and starts praising Satan for some reason. We don't really know her motivations, but she seems mad. Then a random young woman comes up to her and gets stabbed immediately and sacrificed to Satan and thrown in the water. So when the nun summons an avenger, she gets this demon-possessed shark, which, okay, I guess. It's original, I'll give you that. And then we meet our three primary protagonists, which are Emily, Allie, and Lauren. Emily is played by Channing Dodson, who was also in Cannibal Cop and Souls Collide. And Allie was played by Angela Kerecz. I don't know how to pronounce that. I think she is either related to or married to the guy that plays Father Michael, who was played by Bobby Kerecz, both of whom have pretty long credits lists, actually. And Lauren was played by Madison Carney, who was in Hindsight 2020, Acquitted by Faith, which also had Bobby in it, by the way. And she was also in Love 101 freshman class. Honestly, I thought the three ladies did a pretty decent job. They're a little unrefined maybe, so standard B movie fare, but acting-wise, but I think there's potential there for all three of them. So I don't hold anything about this movie against the majority of the cast, but we'll get to that in a minute. So when we meet these folks, they are on their way to the lake to have some fun, lake fun. I don't know what you do at the lake for fun, swim, sit on the lake. Lauren seemed to think that maybe there was going to be like a water park there, and I'm kind of with her on that because lakes are not that exciting if you don't own a boat. You pretty much just stare at the water. That's not very fun. Unfortunately, while they are interacting with each other, there is a scene where Allie is on her phone trying to talk to her ex-boyfriend, and you can see the crew reflected in the car. That was easily avoidable, but I noticed the boom mic first because it's right where the doors connect, and then you can see the crew reflected in the body of the car. I don't know, that was kind of an amateur mistake. I don't know why I think they just did one take and moved on and maybe nobody noticed it. And I did notice that the shark attacks seem to happen in the shallows. This movie has the same problem that like Sharkenstein had, where it's very obvious that everybody is swimming in less than 3 or 4 feet of water because they could easily stand up and occasionally they seem to be half standing. So it's a little distracting at times, but it's kind of funny to think that maybe that shark can change its size. And we learned from a paranormal investigator who's also in the area responding to some ongoing shark attacks that there is in fact 3 women that have died there. And now this is Nancy Chase. She kind of comes up later in the film. She's played by Roni, Jonah, who has a pretty decent career actually, 76 credits on IMDb, including Bigfoot Exorcist, by the way, where she plays Roni. And she was also in the 2023 Savage Vengeance, which I haven't seen yet. So she's got a pretty good B-movie career going here. And her performance is intentionally very over the top. She's playing like a TV psychic investigator. And it's kind of funny because a lot of people are going to watch that and not get that it's a joke within a joke, making fun of all the psychic mediums out there. So she's pretending to channel evil spirits and all this. In the meantime, Allie had been attacked by the shark, but she makes a miraculous recovery and is released from the hospital seemingly fine, except for her current obsession with water. We do meet the priest, Father Michael. His brother was one of the victims of the shark attack, and he decides to go check out what's going on. And when he receives his phone call, being all priestly-like, looking like a priest, I'm wondering, why does a priest have 2 books on acting sitting on his desk where we can and read the spine. The only thing they had to do was turn the books around so you're looking at the pages and not the spine of the book, and we wouldn't have seen that those are acting books. So a bit lazy by whoever is setting up the scene. I mean, set dressing is very important, and sometimes you have to be a little bit more cognizant of what is in the shot, especially when it comes to boom mics, but that's not that big of a problem in this movie. It's the set decoration is actually kind of giving away that this is a movie. And the cast did a really good job of acting like this is all very real and very serious, unlike movies like Sharknado where everybody's in on the joke. These characters are actually acting like everything is supposed to be real. But it looks like the crew was not having that issue. They were kind of half-assing this. A journalist does show up, and in the scene where she confronts the psychic investigator and they're arguing, the music is louder than the dialogue, which is a huge hindrance. That's a YouTube amateur hour mistake and should have been caught in editing, and it was very distracting. Then there's this weird scene where these three girls are in a cemetery trying to make some kind of psychic contact with one of them's dead sister, and it's a scene and subplot that goes nowhere. Like, one girl seems to get possessed or dies, I'm not sure. There were a couple times in here where I was confused if somebody died or was possessed, or if they died at all, because the scene just abruptly ends. And there's this seemingly escaped woman wearing a nightgown that acts like she's helpless at first, then switches to acting like she's possessed by a deadite. And there's a lot of vomit in this movie too, by the way, which was a little disturbing. A lot of pea soup. It's obviously a reference to The Exorcist, but it really doesn't seem to serve much function. So like when the psychic and the journalist meet again at the Nashville Parthenon, there's some vomit there, and we're kind of left wondering what happened to Nancy Chase. Like, did she die, or did the reporter die? It's very confusing, and we get a lot of scenes like that where it looks like they were patchworking two different movies together, one of which was supposed to be a zombie movie of some kind, and one where there's this demonic shark. And I thought that was incredibly confusing and very disjointed, and the continuity is there, but it's often including scenes that go nowhere. So you still have the progression of Nancy and this journalist having arguments and disagreements and confronting each other, but the scenes don't go anywhere. It's just kind of left ambiguous. A random jogger finds a corpse and pukes. That was gross. Although he did make a funny comment, and that was great. The dialogue was pretty solid throughout this. The writing is there, but the filming of the script seems to have completely been derailed in this one. There's a scene at a local fair of some kind, which is fine, but it goes on way too long. It involves some comments that were made early on in the film about the three girls, and Allie's walking around seemingly stalking somebody, and the scene just gets dragged out way too long. Although the dental prosthetics of the shark teeth are amazingly well done. I don't care how cheaply they made those, they should have kept them through the movie, but they only seem to have the one set, and I don't know what the sequence in which this was filmed, because later on there's a girl gonna bite somebody, and she doesn't have shark teeth, so it's just a regular bite, so it doesn't make a whole lot of consistent sense. And there is really no exorcism in this film, because obviously Allie is possessed, but when they go to exorcise her, she's wearing different clothes from when they seemingly captured her, so I don't know why they took time to change her clothes there and change their own clothes. But then they talk about doing an exorcism, but instead they just kind of cut her loose and somebody else gets bit, and I guess that's how you transfer these evil spirits or whatever. And then do the other two die? Because we see a giant shark, but we don't get any confirmation that they were both killed, so that didn't make much sense. But the set looked pretty good with the tiki torches, because everybody knows when you're conducting an exorcism, what you need is to keep mosquitoes away with citronella torches. That is just mandatory, because you don't want mosquitoes, who are agents of Satan, getting involved and creating a distraction. That's just a given. Although I would watch a movie about a swarm of mosquitoes that were agents of Satan. That'd be pretty cool. So there's a $5,000 idea for you out there. There was a scene where somebody had glowing red eyes. That was really cool, and an effect that should have been used throughout the film whenever somebody was about to be attacked by the shark, because Allie does a good job luring people to their doom, but if she had glowing red eyes or glowing orange eyes like the shark did, that would have really solidified it as being very cool. But they they kind of seem to be a little random with the special effects. The shark scenes look pretty good, but this movie is just way too disjointed. It really, really does look like two different movies, and one of them was abandoned and they decided to try and recycle the footage. We do get some resolution, and it looks like the nun may have had her comeuppance, but there is a second movie, so maybe not. There was a lot of padding in this film, and it was unnecessary. I would rather have watched a shorter film and made it 2 films on 1 disc or something, because I bought this DVD, and I was really, really disappointed by the padding. There's these unnecessary characters with unnecessary scenes. The scenes with the shark weren't that bad. They were sci-fi levels of special effects. I've seen way worse. Sharkenstein was way worse on the special effects than this was. But the extra padding, especially at the end with this girl playing with stuffed animals, who I think is the journalist, but I'm not sure because her hair looks different. It really didn't make much sense to put this like long drawn out sequence at the end just so she could spit up her orange Julius in the mall, because the whole thing seems to take place in a mall where there's like an aquarium and she just stares at the fishies and plays with some stuffed animals. It's the most ludicrous add-on scene for runtime padding that I've seen in a very, very long time. So I counted 5 kills, but I'm pretty sure it was closer to 8, but I'm not positive those people actually died in the film, so I can't really count them. Overall, I can't recommend this movie. Although the ladies are all very lovely and most of them did a really, really good job with acting with what they had to work with. I thought the script was fine. It just looks like it was an unfinished film that they threw some extra scenes in and called it a day. And I expected better of Donald Farmer, quite honestly. Plus, there was a lot of continuity issues, not just with storylines that didn't go anywhere and characters that didn't even show up to die. They just were there for some reason. The whole thing with the cemetery that I went over. There was also people changing their clothes in between scenes. There was no continuity there. So there was a sequence where we're at the fair wearing one costume, at the exorcism wearing different clothing, and then a follow-up scene where somebody else gets attacked by one of those 3 wearing a third outfit. So unfortunately, the consistency is just a mess. And this was filmed in 3 different states. It was filmed in Tennessee, Maryland, and Louisiana, according to the credits. So if you can afford to do that much traveling, you can afford to remember who's wearing what costumes. Take a picture of what they're wearing and send it to them and say, hey, remember these clothes or something very, very similar for scene continuity. This is a no-budget film, and I like no-budget films often. They can be entertaining, but unfortunately, there has to be some consistency, and because of the really, really inconsistent bouncing around of the costumes and characters that don't go anywhere, I'm not going to recommend this unless you get it in a multi-pack or for free. It's just not really worth it. The runtime is way too padded, and there's just too many inconsistencies. So it looks like everybody seemed to have fun making this film. The actors, like I said, did a pretty standard B-movie fare acting. Some of them have potential to go on to better things, and that's fine. I hope they did. But this one just isn't anything more than a resume patter, because this is just a complete disaster and a massive letdown. The box art was great, but boy, was this just a messy, messy film. But that's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.